18 hours or 6 p.m.
KFC cares about you. Have your favorite chicken delivered from a branch near you by ordering online from their Facebook page at KFCGY. That's KFCGY. Remember, their current delivery hours are 9:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Enjoy tasty KFC in the comfort of your home or office. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken KFC. With the news at this time, I'm Dennis Chabrol. Good evening. First, the highlights. Several PNCR Central Executive members have slammed their leader, David Granger, for seeking to exclude them from participating in the management of the upcoming Congress. The Health Ministry has recorded fewer positive cases and deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. A 48-year-old Charlestown man was allegedly stabbed to death for sharing intimate pictures on social media of himself and his assailant's girlfriend. In the region, United Nations human rights experts have condemned Washington's expulsion of Haitian migrants and refugees, saying they were part of a policy of racial exclusion of black Haitians at U.S. ports of entry. Jamaican police have now confirmed that Kevin Smith, the pastor for the cult-like Pathways International Kingdom Restoration Ministries, has died. And internationally, at least 36 people are reported to have died and dozens more have been hurt after soldiers fired on crowds opposing a military takeover in Sudan. And now the news in detail. 3 executive members of the People's National Congress Reform PNCR have blistered their party leader David Granger after he asked that they and others be blocked from managing the upcoming elections for a leader. Mr. Granger says they should be disqualified because they had spearheaded a campaign for no-confidence motions against him. Leader aspirants Aubrey Norton and Dr. Richard Van West Charles, as well as Winston Felix, have all denied that they had been fueling the no-confidence motions against Mr. Granger. However, in separate letters, they have blamed him squarely for the lack of confidence that members have in him. Already, top party officials are questioning on what basis the PNCR leader could be concerned about bias when the party's General Secretary Amna Ali, as well as Vice Chairman Annette Ferguson, who are members of the Congress Committee, were present at Joseph Harmon's campaign launch. Ms. Ali was not among those who had spoken at that event, but Ms. Ferguson said she was backing Mr. Harmon because he's a hard-working, dedicated, and committed person who has given selflessly to this great party. Already, according to a letter dated October 19, Dr. Van West Charles stopped short of telling the PNCR leader that Miss Ali should not be part of the electoral process. Dr. Van West Charles, who is son-in-law of late PNC founder leader Forbes Burnham, told Mr. Granger that in the interest of transparency, credibility, impartiality, and membership confidence, Miss Ali should desist from any electoral practice inimical to the culture of democracy within the PNCR. The PNCR executive member said he, as well as he believed, Ms. Lawrence and Messrs. Norton and Felix would not be part of the accreditation or electoral process. The Minister of Health says there are a great number of persons who are due to receive their second dose COVID vaccine that have not resumed to complete the series. Dr. Frank Anthony today appealed to persons to return for their second jab.
Another issue that we're seeing is that persons have received their first dose vaccine, but they're not coming back for their second dose. And we want to encourage those persons who have received a first dose to come forward and get their second dose as quickly as possible. So if you got AstraZeneca as your first dose, please come to one of the vaccination sites so that we can give you your second dose. We have also been using the Sinopharm vaccine, and we have noticed that people are coming, taking the first dose, but are not coming back for the second dose.
Dr. Anthony also appealed to persons who took the Russian jab to be fully vaccinated.
In terms of the Sputnik V, we have both first and second dose available, and there's still a lot of people who are due for their second dose, which means that they've already got their first dose. They're now due for their second dose, but they have not come forward to get their second dose. Currently, we do have second dose now available. Last week, we received a shipment of second dose, and we have those available. So if you are waiting on your second dose Sputnik V, now is the time to come and make sure that you complete the series.
Minister Anthony says the ministry is also issuing the one-dose Johnson & Johnson jab. Dr. Anthony disclosed on Monday that the data for the Russian-made Sputnik V COVID vaccine has been resubmitted to the World Health Organization for emergency use, which is expected to receive clearance in November or early December. The Health Ministry has recorded fewer positive cases and deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. The official data shows 37 new infections in the last 24 hours and 2 deaths, taking the total to 897. There is a decrease in the number of persons seriously sickened with the disease in the COVID ICU. That number is now 22. The record shows a reduced number of hospitalizations of 85, while the number of persons instructed to isolate themselves at home saw a minimal drop to 3,326. Guyana has so far partially vaccinated 73% of its adults, or 377,614, while 237,997, or 46% of adults, are fully vaccinated. For children ages 12 to 17 years old, 26,820 are partially vaccinated, and 17,357 are fully vaccinated. The Caribbean Examinations Council CXC says the COVID-19 pandemic has pointed to the need to cover core competencies rather than the entire curriculum. CXC Registrar Dr. Wayne Wesley made the announcement recently in Guyana. He is concerned about the focus being on giving students too much information instead of equipping them to function effectively across all disciplines.
I don't know why we can't have a curriculum that allows students to complete what they need to know in the 4 years the Ministry of Education would have established for students to learn. We have an attitude now for a lot of extra lessons. We are pressuring the students, giving them a lot of information overload, and when they're stressed out, we wonder what is happening. We need to find an approach that creates an appropriate balance that allows students to demonstrate the critical competencies required to function in society and have that ability to apply to any content, rather than focusing on the syllabus coverage.
The CXC Registrar says the COVID-19 pandemic has led the regional examining body to focus more on competence.
What this pandemic has shown us is that you will at times not have the time to cover the entire content. But we should have been equipping students with the critical competencies that can be applied to any content. As a matter of fact, what we learned in school no longer applies now. We have to be getting on Google and keeping abreast of the new changes in technology to be effective. How are we doing that? We are doing that because we would have developed the foundational skills, not necessarily knowledge, the foundational skills and competencies that would have equipped us with the capabilities to perform in society. And that's where we need to go.
CXC Registrar Dr. Wayne Wesley. A 48-year-old Charlestown man has been stabbed to death for allegedly sharing intimate pictures on social media of himself and his assailant's girlfriend. Police investigators say on Sunday evening, Carl Cameron was vending in front of his 33 Ling Street, Charlestown home when he was approached by a 30-year-old male who allegedly stabbed him 5 times. Investigators say the crime of passion is in the background, that a suspect 1 week ago accused Cameron of sharing a photo on social media with the accused and his girlfriend being intimate. Police say he received 3 stabs to his chest and 2 to his back. After Cameron fell to the ground, the suspect escaped the scene of the alleged murder. He was rushed to the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation and was pronounced dead while receiving treatment. The police have since issued a wanted bulletin for Kevin Hendricks in connection with the murder of Cameron. Persons are asked to contact the nearest police station with information that will lead to the arrest of Hendricks. An overseas-based housewife has been robbed of a vehicle and valuables after returning from a wake at No. 73 Village Quarantine, Berbice. The 58-year-old woman told police investigators that she had returned from a wake, secured her home just after midnight, and was waiting for her son to return home. At around 1:30 this morning, she was confronted by 2 masked men who were armed and who at gunpoint demanded she hand over all her jewelry. The suspects carted off $150,000 in jewelry, a phone, and other items valued at $60,000, and 1 Fielder wagon car bearing registration number PTT 864. After ransacking the house, the suspects went downstairs, at which time her 31-year-old son, a security guard, arrived home. After noticing the armed bandits, he ran and left the car in the yard with the keys inside. The suspects used the said car to escape the scene. The bandits forced their way into the house from the door to the lower flat of the 2-storied building. 2 men are in police custody following the discovery of some 7,000 grams or 7 kilograms of marijuana in a minibus they were traveling in along the Seafield Public Road, West Coast, Berbice. Police say ranks stopped the minibus BXX 119 and escorted the vehicle to the Well-Dad police station where a search was conducted. At the station, a search was conducted on a 44-year-old man who had 3 parcels suspected to be marijuana in his traveling bag, which he had in his possession. A further search was carried out in the minibus where a green and gray haversack was seen in the trunk belonging to a 23-year-old male passenger. In the region, United Nations human rights experts today condemned Washington's expulsions of Haitian migrants and refugees. They say they were part of a policy of racial exclusion of black Haitians at U.S. ports of entry. Under its so-called Title 42 policy adopted last year by the administration of former President Donald Trump on hygienic grounds, the United States has authorized the collective expulsion of migrants and asylum seekers. So far, it has sent hundreds of migrants from a camp in Del Rio, Texas, back to Haiti and thousands away from the camp for processing. The group of 5 UN human rights experts focusing on racism and xenophobia has written a so-called letter of impeachment to Washington to protest the government's actions. The experts say that by expediting the collective expulsion of Haitian migrants, the United States is subjecting a group of predominantly black migrants to intolerable risks of forced return and human rights violations without any individual assessment. They added that the actions are likely violations of international refugee and human rights laws. The UN expert team says that states cannot classify all migrants of a particular nationality as a threat to national security, and all migrants, regardless of their nationality, race, or migration status, must be given the protection required by international law. U.S. President Joe Biden has faced mounting pressure from some health experts and fellow Democrats to stop enforcing the Title 42 order that has essentially cut off access to asylum for hundreds of thousands of migrants, including many from the troubled Caribbean nation. Biden's administration has justified the policy as necessary to contain the spread of the coronavirus. Trinidad and Tobago's opposition United National Congress UNC parliamentarian Wan Saddam Hussein says his party is prepared to take whatever action is required to rectify the events of the sitting of the House of Representatives and the Electoral College on Thursday. Hussein was responding to Newsday's question about leader of the opposition Kamila Prasad-Besesser's assertion that Speaker Bridget Annisa-George's guidelines, which debarred debate in the Parliament on Thursday on a motion to appoint a tribunal to investigate the president, were illegal, null and void. Annisa-George has said that the Constitution did not provide for debate on such a motion. Mr. Hussein, however, says that the UNC will take whatever action is required, whether legal or in Parliament, to rectify what has taken place. He says the Prime Minister Keith Rowley, former Police Service Commission Chairman Bliss C. Prasad, and the President must answer for what led to the UNC filing the particular motion. The Electoral College, which comprises all members of the House of Representatives and the Senate on Thursday, rejected the motion, with all government MPs, senators, and independent senators voting against it, while the opposition bench voted in favor. The motion came after the PSC's collapse, with all commissioners resigning, accusing C. Prasad of acting unilaterally to suspend Gary Griffith as acting Commissioner of Police. Prasad-Besesser accused Annisa-George of breaching the rules of the voting process by not allowing a secret vote in the Parliament. On Sunday, Hussein said matters in future action are being decided, and the party will report to the population when the decisions are made. Caribbean Community CARICOM heads of state, regional health officials, and manufacturers are locked in a debate on whether to make it mandatory to put front-of-package warning labels on manufactured food products in the region. These warning labels are specifically for packaged foods containing high levels of sodium, fat, or sugar. The president of BVI's Cancer Society, Gloria Foy, has since weighed in on the debate. Foy says she supports implementing the policy where imported foods are labeled irrespective of where they come from to show the salt and the sugar content. Foy also looked at the possible impact CARICOM's decision could have on the food consumption of children. She noted that children unknowingly consume foods that do not provide a lot of nutritional value, and this causes problems in their growth and development. Therefore, she thinks the government needs to take a closer look at the health situation of the nation. Meanwhile, the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, has shown support for the proposal by CARICOM Regional Organization for Standards and Quality to have these large octagonal warning labels on the front of food products. The organization says it has shown that people make healthier and more informed decisions when they are presented with the facts. The labeling would assist consumers in identifying foods that have excessive fats, sugar, and salt. These have all been linked to a non-communicable disease that affects the Caribbean. Trinidad and Tobago Police Social and Welfare Association President Inspector Gideon Dixon says the absence of a substantive police commissioner has left the careers of almost 2,800 police officers in limbo. The Office of Police Commissioner has been vacant since October 14, when Justice Nadia Kangaloo declared the appointment of Gary Griffith as acting Commissioner of Police null and void. Deputy Police Commissioner MacDonald Jacob was acting in the position while Griffith was on leave in the weeks before Justice Kangaloo's ruling. His appointment was also voided, and he returned to his position as Deputy Commissioner of Police. But without even an acting commissioner, Dixon yesterday told Guardian Media that hundreds of officers cannot be promoted. And with no police service commission in place, there is no timeline for the appointment of a commissioner either. He says officers have been preparing since mid-year to go through the final stage of the promotion process. Dixon says there are 2,200 223 constables who are eligible to be promoted to the rank of corporal, and 680 vacant positions waiting to be filled. He said an acting commissioner would have been able to approve the appointments and call on those in authority to get their act together. Jamaican police have now confirmed that Kevin Smith, the pastor for the cult-like Pathways International Kingdom Restoration Ministries, has died. Smith died in a motor vehicle accident along the Bog Walk bypass in St. Catherine on Monday morning while being transported by police. A policeman also died while 2 other cops were critically injured in the incident, which occurred at about 9:30. Head of the Jamaica Constabulary Force spokeswoman, Senior Superintendent of Police Stephanie Lindsay, told Jamaica Online that 4 people were seriously injured and 2 of them succumbed to their injuries. Police sources told the Jamaica Observer newspaper online that Smith was being taken to Kingston reportedly because of the behavior of police personnel of the location where he was being held in Montego Bay. Residents of Linstead who visited the crash scene say that a now deceased pastor was seen wearing a blue mask lying beside the dead policeman. They say the car transporting Smith collided with another vehicle. Smith was detained 2 Sundays ago after police went to his church where human sacrifices were reportedly being held. A shootout reportedly occurred between police and some churchgoers. It is reported that at least 1 person's throat was slashed with a knife at the church. In related news, the Yamaya Council of Indigenous Leaders has rejected a cult practice at Pathways International Kingdom Restoration Ministries in Paradise and James, Jamaica, which resulted in the death of 3 people just over 1 week ago. The throats of 2 members were slit during a ritual, and a 3rd person was killed in a confrontation with the police. Chief Kalan Kaiman, otherwise known as Robert Pearman of Yamaya Guani Taino people, told the Jamaica Observer in an interview that what has taken place is very disturbing and is a concern about the repercussions and the views that may come from that as religious organizations seek to have their rights and practices established and accepted by the wider society. Pearman says that the exposed and unorthodox culture of Pathways International and public outrage that followed have the potential to spill over and disrupt the strides being made by the Maroons. 42 members of the congregation, 31 women and 11 men, and 14 children were taken into custody following last Sunday's incident. The children were placed in state care, while the women and 7 of the men were charged with breaches of the Disaster Risk Management Act and granted bail. 4 of the men, including Smith, remain in custody. Smith earlier today died in a car accident while he was being transported by police. And now for the international news from the BBC World Service.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. There are reports that the Sudanese armed forces have been going house to house, arresting local protest organisers in the capital Khartoum in a bid to stem the opposition to the military coup. Doctors say at least 2 people have been killed and around 80 others wounded after soldiers opened fire on the large crowds that took to the streets to oppose the takeover. Hussam Al-Nasri was among the protesters.
People are very angry. The immediate reaction was anger. They are not accepting this coup. They are not accepting all that was said by General Burhan, and they will continue protesting until we have our civilian leadership released, until we have our civilian government reinstated.
There has been worldwide condemnation of the coup in Sudan. The United States says it's suspended $700 million in aid and has called for the immediate restoration of a civilian government. Barbara Plett-Usher is in Washington.
The suspension of aid concerns a package of economic support meant to assist Sudan's democratic transition. The State Department spokesman Ned Price said none of the money had yet been dispersed. He said the U.S. has not been in touch with the Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok since the military takeover. Washington is demanding that the generals release him and other political detainees, restore the civilian-led government, and refrain from violence against peaceful protesters. Mr. Price said the administration had no prior knowledge of the military's intentions.
The African Union has called for the immediate resumption of dialogue between the military and civilians. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres demanded the release of civilian rulers. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has withdrawn a threat to expel 10 allied ambassadors after they pledged not to interfere in Turkey's internal affairs. Mike Sanders has the details.
President Erdogan appears to have averted a head-on collision with NATO allies, including the United States and Germany. On Saturday, he ordered the Foreign Ministry to declare the 10 ambassadors persona non grata. That usually entails expulsion within 48 hours and reciprocal action. A face-saving formula was needed. It came when the US affirmed its commitment to the Vienna Convention clause against meddling in the host nation's domestic affairs. But Mr. Erdogan stressed that anyone who didn't respect Turkey couldn't stay there. He said the ambassador's call for the release of the businessman Osman Kavala was an insult to Turkey's judiciary.
The United States has announced new requirements for foreign nationals travelling to the United States by air. From the 8th of November, most travellers will have to prove they've been vaccinated and show a negative test. People will also now be able to travel from China, India and much of Europe. This is Moira Alderson with the latest world news from the BBC. The President of Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, has announced that he's ending the state of emergency that's been enforced since April 2017. Yusuf Taha reports.
In a Facebook post, President al-Sisi announced that he would not be extending the state of emergency because Egypt had become, as he put it, an oasis of security and stability. He imposed a strict measure 4 years ago in the aftermath of the bombings of 2 churches in the northern cities of Alexandria and Tanta. It gave police wider powers, curtailed civil liberties, and put civilians on trial before military courts. Egypt is no stranger to states of emergency. The late President Hosni Mubarak imposed one following the assassination of his predecessor, Anwar Sadat, in 1981. It remained in place till he was toppled 30 years later.
An explosion on a bus in Uganda has killed 1 person and injured several others. It comes just 2 days after a deadly bombing at a bar in the capital Kampala. The latest explosion was in the town of Lungala on the main road between Kampala and Masaka. The Islamic State group said it was behind Saturday's bar attack that killed an 18-year-old woman and injured several others. Facebook has removed a video by the Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro in which he claimed that COVID-19 vaccines were linked with developing AIDS. The video has been deleted from the president's account and from Instagram, which is also owned by Facebook. A fragment of an ancient carved stone slab depicting the ruler of the long-ruined South American city of Piedras Negras has been returned to what is now Guatemala. This relic was looted from the site in the 1960s and reappeared in Paris in 2019 during an auction. The 1,300-year-old relic shows the top part of a sumptuous headdress and a jade petticoat worn by the god of corn. BBC News.
That's the news to the moment.
After a hard day's work, a lime at the workplace would be great, and a lime at the workplace with KFC would be even better, with a wide choice of finger-licking meals in a wide range of sizes. It could be the celebration of a colleague's birthday or promotion, or just a lime for no reason at all. Any lime, anytime, anywhere is better and tastier with a delicious meal from any of KFC's 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
And now a recap of the highlights. Several PNCR Central Executive members have slammed their leader, David Granger, for seeking to exclude them from participating in the management of the upcoming process. The Health Ministry has recorded fewer positive cases and deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. A 48-year-old Charlestown man was allegedly stabbed to death for sharing intimate pictures on social media of himself and his assailant's girlfriend. In the region, United Nations human rights experts have condemned Washington's expulsions of Haitian migrants and refugees, saying they were part of a policy of racial exclusion of black Haitians at U.S. ports of entry. And Jamaican police have now confirmed that Kevin Smith, the pastor for the cult-like Pathways International Kingdom Restoration Ministries, has died in a car accident. The news came to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
News Talk Radio again, 103.1 FM, with the accent on good Guyanese radio.
The time in Guyana, 18 hours 30.